Now, in 3 hours from now, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump will be back in the White House. His face-to-face meeting with Joe Biden comes exactly 1 week after he won the presidency. It's a tradition between the incoming and outgoing presidents. Trump, however, did not invite Biden to the White House 4 years ago, and he was the first president in modern history not to attend his successor's inauguration. For more on this story, we can bring in our international affairs commentator Douglas Herbert. Doug, to be a fly on that wall during that meeting, I mean, this is going to be very awkward, isn't it, given that these two men have said so much against each other on the campaign trail and probably in private too.
Yeah, look, this redefines awkward in every sense of the word, and also rich in irony. They'll be sitting in the Oval Office, right? Literally just a few feet from the dining room of the White House in which Donald Trump sat and watched on his 60-inch television screen the attack on the Capitol back in January 2021, an attack that he is accused of inciting a mob attack there. So there's a lot of rich ironies in this meeting, but this meeting isn't about that. This meeting is about this meeting. And what I mean by that is it is purely the symbolism, this meeting being one of the hallmarks of the so-called, quote, peaceful transfer of power. Joe Biden, no matter how much he may despise Donald Trump, loathe his values, disagree with almost every single thing Donald Trump stands for as a human being, and vice versa. No matter how much, Joe Biden is also what we might call an institutionalist who believes deeply in respecting American institutions and the pillars of what he sees as American democracy. One of those elements of the so-called peaceful transfer of power is that you graciously invite your successor, yes, a man who stomped to a resounding victory that your party never really foresaw. You invite him to the White House and you sit there and you sit beside him and you bite the bullet and you grin and bear it. That is what I mean by being an institutionalist here. Is Joe Biden, is this a meeting that he would
Look
want
forward
to have?
to it.
No, obviously not. But I do think that it is part of the thinking within the party. You do not simply spurn a meeting with a successor because you disagree with everything he stands for and you're antithetical to all of his values. You have to do, in Biden's view, what Trump did not do. And we heard this in Biden's speech about a week ago after the election, in which he basically said that we must respect the American people, must respect the people's choice.
Yeah.
And it's part of the pillars of power and part of the pillars of democracy. So it is a statement in itself. This meeting will go on, and the fact they don't like each other should not be an issue. The peaceful transfer of power is above that.
Yeah, and Kamala Harris reiterated that too in her concession speech. Now, Trump will also be heading to Capitol Hill while he's in D.C., where the Republicans within his party are choosing their new leader.
Yeah, this is really the day of Mr. Trump goes to Washington. You're right. He'll be going to Capitol Hill, the building that I just had mentioned. A mob attacked that he incited a mob to attack in 2021. This is for a race, a contest. It is a secret ballot. We will not know publicly how the Senate Republicans have voted. Incoming Republicans are allowed to vote. Outgoing Republicans, or those who aren't reelected, are not allowed to vote. There's a caucus of 53 Republicans right now. In order to win this race, to succeed Mitch McConnell, who has been in the post of Senate Majority Leader for the past 18 years, a long stretch in power, so a lot of change, you'll need a majority, 27 votes in this case, of Republicans. What's interesting about this race, well, there's a lot interesting about it, but in the little time we have, what's most interesting is that the three main contenders, they are all to varying degree Trump whisperers. Everyone is right now genuflecting before the altar of Donald Trump, which basically means groveling to a certain extent to show their favor. Now, two of them, John Thune of South Dakota and John Cornyn of Texas, both longtime Republican, high-level Republicans. One is the current Republican whip. One is a former Republican whip. They're both very respected, long-serving in the party, two Johns. They've been critical of Trump. And they're not seen as the most diehard among Republicans of Trump supporters. But they're still on board with Trump, and they have still been very much signaling in recent days that they will do Trump's bidding, meaning that they are open to Trump's demand that they green light, that is, allow Trump to make senior-level executive appointments without Senate confirmation. He wants to fast-track these nominations. They've signaled they're open. The third contender in this race is the interesting one. His name is Rick Scott. also a Republican of Florida. He's seen as the outsider, and he is the one who has the strong endorsement of the MAGA movement and a lot of the far-right supporters of Donald Trump. But interestingly, Donald Trump himself has shied away from publicly endorsing Rick Scott. So while Trump himself hasn't thrown his backing around Rick Scott, the supposed MAGA candidate among these three Republicans, Rick Scott is seen by some as a potential kingmaker, maybe not getting enough Senate support among his fellow Republicans to get the leadership post, but the kingmaker in the sense that the Senate Republicans who do vote for him, if he doesn't clear the hurdle to the final round, his voters will have to decide between the two Johns. It will be a very interesting race, but the Senate is changing after 18 years of Mitch McConnell leadership.
Indeed. Thank you very much for that, Douglas Herbert there.